This meeting is being recorded.
On to polymers, miss.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, yes, continue.
Yeah, miss, we moved on to polymers. So polymers are made up of monosaccharides, and they basically link together in condensation reactions, and they form glycosidic bonds, which is basically the COC bond. And the different kind of polymers, such as cellulose, starch, and glycogen, and they are differently adapted to their structures are differently adapted to their functions. So, for example, for cellulose, is present in plants, and glycogen is the storage molecule in animals. Starch is again there for plants, miss, and um, energy stored as starch because starch is insoluble, so it does not affect the osmotic water potential and yeah, the water potential of the cells. And then we discussed that starch is made up of amylose and amylopectin, which are again structurally different. So, for example, amylose it has 1,4 glycosidic bonds, whereas amylopectin has 1,4 and 1,6 glycosidic bonds. And then we moved on to glycogen. So, glycogen has a more branched structure than both amylopectin and amylose.
What about the structure? That can you see my screen in which I have shown you the structure of cellulose? Can you see that?
Yes, Miss, I can see.
This was the last thing I think that we did. This was about why cellulose structure, or why the way the cellulose is forming bonds is a bit different from how the bonds are formed in glycogen and starch. So what's the main difference between the bond formation in glycogen and starch on one hand and cellulose on the other hand? Yes.
Is for cellulose, it's basically beta glucose subunits. So the second molecule it has to be fully inverted 180 degrees to form the glycosidic bond.
Okay. And what kind of glycosidic bond is this? Is this 1,4 glycosidic bond?
Yes, miss, it's a 1,4 glycosidic.
Good. Now let's start. In fact, I had shown you this, right? If you don't invert the molecule to 180 degrees, then what will be the result? You will not be able to make a 1,4 glycosidic bond between two adjacent cellulose molecules. Why? Because the OH groups will not lie adjacent to each other, as is very clearly visible in the diagram over here. Let's move forward. And yes, we will be now studying the structure of cellulose in detail. So if I move from big to small, let's suppose that this is a plant cell, and we always have studied since O levels that plant cells have got cell wall, and the cell wall is made up of cellulose, right? So if I move from uh, cellulose cell wall, and if I try to zoom into it, I will say that the cell wall is made up of many cellulose fibers. And if I pick up this one cellulose fiber, see, you can see so many cellulose fibers over here. And if I just pull up one of this cellulose fiber and I zoom into it, I will see that one cellulose fiber is made up of many microfibrils. ठीक है, ये सारे, for example, I would say one microfibril, two, three, four, और इन सबको मिला के the diameter is so small, it's 50 nanometers, right? So one cellulose fiber, which is 50 nanometers in diameter, is made up of so many microfibrils. Let me go further down this lane. So I will see that if I pull out one microfibril, यानी किसको एक microfibril को अगर मैं pull करूँ किसी में से भी इनको either this, then I will see that one microfibril is 10 nanometers in diameter, okay, and it is made up of roughly 60 to 70 cellulose molecules, okay, 60 to 70 cellulose molecules. And you know the structure of one cellulose molecule, because one cellulose molecule is actually what? It is made up of beta glucose, many beta glucose units, right? अच्छा, अब हम और further down जाके देखते हैं कि ये कैसे लगता है. 70 to 60 cellulose molecule. Let's open them up. So we see, what do we see? We see that line or a chain of beta glucose molecules have been joined end to end to make the cellulose molecule, right? And this bond that you see, which is found between two beta glucose molecules, is one co-glycosidic bond. Okay? And this is something different. This is a weak bond, which is known as a hydrogen bond. Now I'm zooming into the picture more so that I can show you the hydrogen bonds. तो ये जो आपका bond है ना, I'm using the red color to show the one co-glycosidic bonds, okay? And I'm using the blue color to show the dotted line, the hydrogen bonds. Okay? Any idea about hydrogen bonds? Have you done hydrogen bonds in O levels in chemistry?
It's not really.
Not really. So this means I will have to
Is it
explain.
something to do with dipoles and polar substances?
Yeah, something to do with dipoles and polar substances. This one of the thing was first I will have to do hydrogen bonds with you. So I think we should first try to understand what hydrogen bonds are, and then I will go back to cellulose. So let me go to that part where we have hydrogen bonds. So you can see my screen very clearly, and you can see the structure of a water molecule. Okay? A water molecule is made up of two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. The way these are bonded to each other is by covalent bonding, which is sharing of the electrons. But somehow, the sharing of the electrons is not an equal share or a fair share, in that oxygen gets a far better share of a far better pull on the electrons, I would say, as compared to hydrogen. Which is why the resultant overall charge on the oxygen atom is electronegative, and the resultant charge on the hydrogen atoms is electropositive. This makes the water molecule a molecule which has an unequal distribution of charge. Why? Because अगर इस molecule का पूरा charge अगर मैं आपसे कहूँ what's the total or the net charge on this molecule, तो आप मुझे कहोगी कि part of this molecule has positive charge and part has negative charge. ठीक है? तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि any molecule which is partially negative and partially positive is said to have an unequal distribution of charge. And such molecules are known as polar molecules. So hence, by that definition, water is a polar molecule. Okay. Let's move on to some more detail about this. Let's say if this is a beaker full of water, okay, and I have over here only two molecules are shown. Again, in reality, there will be many molecules. तो अगर आपके पास जो है वो इस तरह से बहुत सारे water molecules हो, so there will always be a force of attraction between the electronegative oxygen atom and the electropositive hydrogen atom. And this force of attraction is also a kind of bond formation, which is known as a hydrogen bond. Okay? A hydrogen bond is a bond that is formed between a hydrogen atom and not necessarily oxygen atom, any other electronegative atom. In case of molecule, वो negative atom जो है वो आपका oxygen है. In case of proteins या amino acid, that negative molecule can be nitrogen also, and it can be sometimes oxygen also. Depends. ठीक है? तो अगर हम एक generalized definition करना चाहें ना इसकी आपकी hydrogen bond की, so the definition will be, let me go to your textbook and give you a definition. The definition of hydrogen bond will be a relatively weak bond that has been formed by the attraction between a group with a small positive charge on the hydrogen atom and another group carrying a small negative charge, and that can be any group. For example, it can be an oxygen atom, it can be between two OH groups, or it can be between nitrogen and hydrogen, it can be between any electronegative atom and a positive atom. लेकिन दो positive atom जो है वो हमेशा hydrogen होना चाहिए, इसी वजह से इसको हम hydrogen bonds कहते हैं. Is the concept of hydrogen bond understood?
Yes, Miss, I understand.
Okay. See, what's written over here. This is your textbook. Your textbook says in water, the negatively charged oxygen of one molecule is attracted to a positively charged hydrogen of another, and this attraction is called a hydrogen bond. The hydrogen bond is traditionally shown as a dotted or dashed line in diagram. ठीक है, तो अगर आपको कहीं पे भी डैश लाइन नजर आती है, that shows it's a hydrogen bond. What is its significance? कि individually तो ये एक weak bond है, but if you have collectively lots of hydrogen bonds, it makes that molecule a very strong molecule, strong हो जाता है. ठीक है. Getting back to cellulose, you were saying something? Alia, are you saying something?
No, Miss, I was just saying it's. I understand. It's okay.
Getting back to
Miss,
the,
your voice keeps cutting off in between. Actually,
okay, now can you hear me clearly?
yeah, Miss, it's fine.
Okay. Let's connect this concept of hydrogen bond to the structure of cellulose. अब आप cellulose को यहाँ पे देखो कि the same picture that I was showing you, what I was trying to show you was, this is your cellulose, beta glucose, beta glucose, beta glucose, beta glucose, beta glucose. A chain of beta glucose molecules joined end to end by means of beta 1,4 glycosidic bonds is a cellulose molecule. Achha, now this is one chain of beta glucose, this is another chain of beta glucose. These two chains are joined to each other by this dotted structure, which is the hydrogen bonds. Okay? Although individually these hydrogen bonds are weak, but collectively they make cellulose a very, very strong molecule, giving it a tensile strength. Okay? इस strength को आप कहते हैं tensile strength. What do you mean by tensile? Okay? If you try to pull cellulose from one end, और cellulose actually हमारा कपड़ा होता है, जो हम कपड़ा पहनते हैं ना, that's cellulose. Let's say this is a piece of cloth or a piece of rope, and there is a tug of war going on. Okay, there are people standing on this side, and there is another team standing on this side. Usually, tug of wars, many people they pull in their own respective directions, but the rope never tears apart, isn't it? वो rope क्यों नहीं टूटती? Because the rope is made up of cellulose, and the cellulose molecule is a strong molecule. Why? There are many reasons to it. The first reason is that one beta glucose molecule is bonded to another beta glucose molecule by inverting 180 degree. तो उसके molecule के invert होने की वजह से भी वो बहुत difficult होता है to break. And one chain of beta glucose molecules is attracted to another chain of beta glucose molecules through many hydrogen bonds. Is that clear?
Yes, Miss.
Let's read this bit so that it becomes more clear to us. Look what's written over here. This arrangement of beta glucose molecules, यानी ऐसी arrangement जिसमें एक beta glucose molecule जो है वो दूसरे beta glucose molecule से it is 180 degrees rotated. This arrangement results in a strong molecule because the hydrogen atoms of the OH groups are weakly attracted to the oxygen atoms in the same cellulose molecule, the oxygen of the glucose ring. And इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? The hydrogen atoms of the OH groups are weakly attracted to the oxygen atoms in the same cellulose molecule, the oxygen of the glucose ring. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ?
Miss, because there are two beta glucose monomers, right? So one water molecule has to be expelled. So the hydrogen atom from one monomer is attracted to the hydroxyl group from the other monomer.
Hydrogen atoms of the OH group are weakly attracted to the oxygen atoms in the same cellulose molecule. This is what they are saying. Hydrogen atom of the OH group, ठीक है, is attracted to the oxygen. Or it can be this also, like this is the hydrogen atom of the OH group is attracted to the oxygen. And then again the hydrogen atom of the OH group is attracted to the oxygen because hydrogen is electropositive and oxygen is electronegative. इसको हम हटा लेते हैं क्योंकि ये तो remove हो जाएगा, right? Again, hydrogen is electropositive, oxygen is electronegative. बहुत सारे bonds बन गए, right?
Okay,
अच्छा
miss.
ठीक है अच्छा थोड़ा सा मैं स्लो जाऊंगी you know what I'm trying to explain you is that I want to explain you that the hydrogen bonds can form in two ways. They can form intramolecularly or intermolecularly. कैसे? कि for example अगर मेरे पास दो चेन्स है राइट, ये एक चेन है ठीक है, ऐसी ही एक चेन यहाँ पे भी है लेट्स से, तो द हाइड्रोजन बॉन्ड्स कैन फॉर्म बिटवीन द ऑक्सीजन एंड द हाइड्रोजन ऐसे करके, यानी आपस में एक दूसरे से, एंड द हाइड्रोजन बॉन्ड्स कैन आल्सो फॉर्म लाइक दिस. In fact, I can show you on this. Let me show you on this. Hydrogen bonds can form like this in between components of the same chain, and the hydrogen bonds can form between one chain and another chain. So this means this will be two kinds of hydrogen bonds: intramolecular hydrogen bonds and intermolecular hydrogen bonds. Just note this down, please. Note this down. Are you getting this, beta?
Yes, miss, I'm getting you.
And plant finishes, so you just read this paragraph. You read this paragraph, now read these two paragraphs. This and have you read it, beta?
Oh, miss, I'm on the second paragraph.
Second paragraph is just the repetition.
Okay, miss, then I'm done reading.
If I just summarize these two paragraphs, I would say the reason that cellulose is a strong molecule is that there are lots of hydrogen bonds formed in between two cellulose molecules within the same chain, and in between two cellulose molecules in different chains. So this results in the formation of so many cross linkages that it makes cellulose just like a glue-like matrix which increases its strength. And for this, in exams they ask you, they actually ask you what is the meaning of the word cellulose fibers have a very tensile strength. So the meaning of this word is that किसी भी चीज को अगर हम कहेंगे कि इसकी टेंसाइल स्ट्रेंथ बहुत ज्यादा है, it means that if we pull that substance from both ends, it will never break. Okay, so this means tensile strength, and this strength is almost equal to that of steel. What makes cellulose have a high tensile strength? The large number of the hydrogen bonds which are found intramolecularly and intermolecularly. And this is the reason why that the plant cells never burst, no matter how long you keep it in water or in a solution of high water potential. The water will keep entering the plant cell and it will never burst. Right? The cell wall is strong enough to resist all those changes in the pressures. Right? And it is these pressures that help provide support for the plant tissues, because you should remember earlier that plant tissues do not have skeleton. ठीक है, लेकिन फिर भी plant जो है उसका stem बड़ा firmly grow करता है against the gravity in the upward direction. So this firmness and this rigidity, this turgidity or strength is because of the cell wall, and the strength of the cell wall is because of the cellulose molecule, right? Despite their strength, the cellulose fibers, they are freely permeable. This also we've done in O levels. The cellulose is a completely permeable structure, so it allows all we are done with cellulose. And now I'm giving you a task, and that is you have to make a table to show 3 ways in which the molecular structures of amylose and cellulose differ. Right?
Okay, miss. Miss?
Yes, Peter. Yes.
Miss, I'm done with table, miss.
Okay, you can tell me.
Okay. So miss, for the first one, amylose is made up of alpha glucose subunits, whereas cellulose is made up of beta glucose subunits.
And second difference,
Second, miss, amylose has a helix structure, where cellulose is formed into layers of chains.
cellulose is fibers.
Fibers.
Amylase is
Okay.
amylose is a helix and cellulose has a fiber structure. And
And then Miss cellulose has hydrogen bonds, whereas amylase does not have hydrogen bonds.
Bonds and amylose doesn't have hydrogen bonds. Okay,
No, Miss, I couldn't find any third difference actually. Let me just.
amylose has a functional role, cellulose has a structural role. Do you agree to that?
Yes, Miss. Okay.
Because amylose is a storage form of starch and it is found, like for example, it's a storage form of starch, so it will help us or help a plant when starch stores have been depleted or when there's not enough glucose, so starch breakdown होके glucose बन जाएगा, right? Whereas cellulose will never be broken down. Cellulose has a structural role. Structural role meaning it forms a part of the cell wall. तो इसका एक structural role है and structural significance है. समझ आ रही है बात?
Yes, Miss. Okay.
Moving again back to hydrogen bonding and dipoles, when we were discussing about the fact that water is a molecule that has an unequal distribution of charge because of its electronegative oxygen atom and electropositive hydrogen atoms. So we call such molecules as polar. ठीक है. अब जितने भी और molecules polar होंगे ना, they will dissolve in water because water itself is a polar molecule. ठीक है. For example, substances like amino acids or substances like enzymes or many other substances, okay, which are polar, like for example glucose. Glucose is a polar substance, but glucose always gets dissolved in water. यही हमने पढ़ा है ना, monosaccharides. When we were doing mono and disaccharides, so we studied that they are sweet in taste and they are soluble in water. इसलिए because monosaccharides are also polar and water is also polar. तो जो polar substance होते हैं वो if any other molecule is polar, it will very easily dissolve in water because water is also polar. ठीक है? And another thing is that all those molecules which have dipoles, or in other words, all those molecules which are polar, they are hydrophilic. Meaning what? Hydrophilic means that they are very friendly to uh, water containing molecules, okay? And they are soluble in water. And all those molecules which don't have dipoles or which are non-polar, जैसे कि fats या fatty acids, they are hydrophobic. Hydrophobic means water hating, which means they repel water and they are insoluble in water. Do you think fats are soluble in water?
No, Miss, I don't think they're soluble in
Fats
water.
are not soluble in water. Why? Because fats non-polar है, ठीक है? Non-polar है तो वो water को पसंद नहीं करते. Fats don't have dipoles in them, so they are hydrophobic. Phobe का मतलब क्या? Phobia means fear. So they are water hating. तो example इसकी क्या है? Fats हैं. Fats don't have dipoles. They are non-polar, so they are water hating. Water hating means that they will never dissolve in water, so they are insoluble in water. ठीक है. जो substances जिनके पास dipole है, जैसे कि example है glucose, ठीक है, they are, we would say, since they have dipoles, we would say they are polar, they are water loving, they love water and they are soluble in water. इतनी बात समझ आ रही है?
Yes, Miss. Okay.
So I'll just show you something. There was one slide which dealt with the properties. I'll give you the information and you can note it down. For example, you can there are two things which you have to remember. polar and non-polar substances. So the polar substances have dipoles, meaning an unequal distribution of charge. Evenly charged means either the overall charge is positive or negative, right? And then polar substances are water soluble, and we call them hydrophilic or water loving. We call them hydrophobic or water hating. And as an example, you can remember for the time being at least one for each. So here we have salts, here we have lipids, right? Yeah, I hope this is all making sense.
Yes, miss. Understand.
Okay, so we are done with this, and then we move on to fats or lipids, right? In lipids, we have a lipids actually, of course, are a whole class of organic molecules. And if you recap from whatever we have done up till now, Alia, do you think lipids are classified as polymers? Yes or no?
Miss, from what we previously discussed, lipids are not classified as polymers.
Correct. Because they are not made up of repeating similar subunits which are monomers. So then what are lipids made up of? Lipids are made by the condensation reaction between fatty acids and alcohol. Yeah, this is your very simple way to describe a fatty acid, and this is your alcohol. Okay, and when you have a condensation reaction between these, the resultant is an ester. Over here, this reaction might look very, very confusing, and since this topic has been revised a bit, by revised I mean presented in a little different manner as far as the new year syllabus is concerned. So I would like to go back to your textbook to show you about lipids. Okay? Lipids is basically a general word which is used for a variable group of chemicals which can be solids and they can be liquids. सॉलिड को हम फैट्स कहते हैं एंड लिक्विड्स को ऑयल्स कहते हैं फैट्स की एग्जांपल ये है कि लाइक बेसिक घी बटर एंड मार्जिन दे आर ऑल सॉलिड लिपिड्स them what they do. Basically, they are made up of fatty acids and alcohol. In O level, you must have done. Can you tell me how many fatty acids and how many glycerol molecules make up one lipid molecule? Yes, Sanjay.
Is just one glycerol molecule and three fatty acids.
One glycerol molecule and three fatty acids, like this, isn't it?
Yes, miss.
One glycerol molecule and three fatty acids. So this is a glycerol molecule. This is a glycerol molecule. Let me just circle it so that you know very clearly glycerol कौन सा वाला है. This is, these are actually three fatty acids. Okay. Fatty acid number 1, fatty acid number 2, and fatty acid number. ठीक है. Three fatty acids हो गए, one glycerol हो गया, right? And condensation reaction with the removal of three water molecules. कहाँ से? कौन से water molecules? You tell me from where the water molecules are taken. I rub all this. Yes, can you tell me, beta? Water molecules हमने कहाँ से निकाले?
Miss, one hydrogen molecule atom from glycerol and then OH molecules from fatty acids.
Like that. So when you remove the water molecule, you end up with this oxygen, oxygen only, which you can see the connection between oxygen and a carbon atom over here and a carbon atom over there. Whenever glycerol is an alcohol, okay? Glycerol is an alcohol as far as chemistry knowledge is concerned, and fatty acids are fatty acids, okay? Whenever an alcohol is made to condense with a fatty acid, the resultant molecule that is formed is known as an ester. ये जो बना है ना ये molecule उसको हम कहते हैं ester. And the bonds that have been formed, the तीन bonds जो बने हैं उनको हम कहते हैं ester bonds, right? I'll show this to you on the next page. In fact, on the previous page, okay, what does it actually mean? Alcohols are a series of organic molecules which contain a hydroxyl group. अभी आपको previous page पे एक molecule नजर आ रहा था that was glycerol because it has many hydroxyl groups attached to carbon atoms. Glycerol is an alcohol with three hydroxyl groups. The reaction between an acid जो कि fatty acid है and an alcohol जो कि उस वहाँ पे glycerol है produces a chemical known as an ester, and the linkage between an acid and the alcohol is known as an ester bond. Okay? And this you can represent very simply the reaction like this. या तो आप ऐसे दिखा सकते हो reaction को showing this कि ये आपका fatty acid है, ये आपका alcohol है. जब आपने दोनों का reaction किया तो क्या बचा? Water की removal हो गई जिसकी वजह से ये compound बचा and the water molecule is removed. Okay? So this compound is known as the ester and the bond is known as the ester linkage. The ester bond और जैसे आपको hydrogen bond की definition आनी चाहिए थी, तो यहाँ पे ester bond की भी definition आनी चाहिए. What is it? It is represented as COO, यानी कि ऐसे a bond and then CO and O formed when an acid reacts with an alcohol. अब मुझे बताओ आलिया ये COO वाली बात आपको समझ आ रही है या नहीं?
Yes, miss, it's clear.
Yeah, अच्छा, okay. Can you tell me where is this COO on this molecule? Yes.
Miss, it's in the hydrocarbon tail, miss. So there's double bond with O upwards, and then there's a side bond with O as well.
What do you mean?
No, I missed this one.
This is represented as this. So अगर आपसे एग्जाम में पूछा जा रहा है कि what bond is this? For example, if you've been given options, तो ये कौन सा bond है? So you would say that this is the ester bond. ठीक है? And for example, if it is asked in exams that how does a glycosidic bond look like? तो आपको ऐसे दिखाना होगा. I think there is a definition and also a symbol used for glycosidic bond. This. You agree that this is a glycosidic bond? COC. CO and C. How come COC? CO and C. This is a carbon, this is another carbon, and this is O. Now do you understand this?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि we can make a list of symbols actually. For example, if I want to show a glycosidic bond, I will show with this symbol CO and C. And if I want to show a ester bond, I will show like this. Okay. Why? Because there was a question that I had to ask both of you, लेकिन मैंने उसका पूछा नहीं था. And let me ask you the question today. This was the question. याद है मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी, लेकिन मैंने नहीं पूछा. So in that case, then what's the correct answer? Which diagram shows the bond linking the individual units of both glycogen and amylose?
Yes, ma'am. So it's option C for this.
Now you understand why it's COC?
Yes, ma'am. This is a glycosidic bond.
हाँ. और अगर ये क्वेश्चन होता उसके लिए क्या कहते हैं this I'm changing the question and I make it for a triglyceride or a lipid. Then I would say that the bond is yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It's correct.
Let's do that. Feel that it's not clear, you can always stop me on here. Yes, it's all part. So the reason I'm calling it a triglyceride is tri word is for three fatty acids. Fatty acid number 1, fatty acid number 2, and number 3. And glyceride is for glycerol. So when a glycerol molecule combines with three fatty acids, the resultant that we get is a triglyceride molecule. With the removal of three water molecules, a condensation reaction, and with the formation of three ester bonds. आप इसको स्ट्रक्चरल फॉर्मूला के हिसाब से दिखाओगे तो ऐसे दिखाओगे. अगर आप इसको डायग्रामेटिकली दिखाना चाहते हो तो you can show it like this, or very simply you can show it like this. Right? Now let's study a bit about the fatty acids. How many kinds of fatty acids there can be, or what is the basic structure of a fatty acid? The basic structure of any fatty acid is that it is made up of two ends, a head and a tail. A head is made up of COOH2, carboxylic acid group. ये रहा इसका head. किसी भी fatty acid का जो head है वो है COOH. ठीक है? Then you have a hydrocarbon tail जो आपको नजर आ रही है, ये पूरी hydrocarbon tail. And then at the other end you have a methyl group. methyl group नजर आ रहा है ना CH3. यहाँ पे भी CH3 नजर आ रहा है. So a carboxylic acid head, a hydrocarbon tail, and a methyl group. Now, what difference do you see between the fatty acid chain on the left-hand side and the fatty acid chain on the right-hand side? Yes, Arjun. क्या difference नजर आ रहा है? उनको same ही है, बस एक difference.
Miss, the unsaturated fatty acid has double bonds, while the other one doesn't.
How many double bonds does it have?
Miss, 3 double bonds.
Now, any fatty acid which has double bonds is known as an unsaturated fatty acid. Unsaturated उसको इसलिए कहते हैं कि डबल बॉन्ड होने की वजह से वो यानी जो फैटी एसिड राइट साइड पे है उसको कंपेयर करें विद द फैटी एसिड ऑन द लेफ्ट हैंड साइड, तो लेफ्ट हैंड साइड वाले फैटी एसिड में हाइड्रोजन ज्यादा है, दैट्स व्हाई इट्स सैचुरेटेड विद हाइड्रोजन। राइट हैंड साइड वाले में डबल बॉन्ड्स की वजह से इट इज लेस सैचुरेटेड विद हाइड्रोजन, सो वी से इट्स एन अनसैचुरेटेड। What biological significance does this have? Any fatty acid which has covalent bonds, double covalent bonds, becomes more compact and can be easily, packed. It is more liquid at room temperature as compared to a fatty acid जिससे कोई double bond है। क्यों? इसलिए कि double bond होने की वजह से the fatty acid develops a kink. A kink means a bend. Kink है ना, bend है। अब जो मॉलिक्यूल बेंड होता है ना उसको आराम से आप फिट कर सकते हैं राइट इनटू स्पेस में। जो मॉलिक्यूल स्ट्रेट होता है वो उसकी फिटिंग जो है ना वो इतनी अच्छी नहीं होती, इट ऑक्यूपाइज अ लॉट ऑफ स्पेस। सो सच काइंड ऑफ मॉलिक्यूल्स व्हिच डोंट हैव अ बेंड इन देयर बेस are more solids at room temperatures because they don't have a double bond, and the fatty acids which have double bonds they are bent and hence they are more compact, and such kind of fatty acids are liquids at room temperature. Unsaturated fatty acids are obtained from plants. Saturated fatty acids are obtained from animals. So इसको हम कहते हैं animal fat और इसको हम कहते हैं plant fat। ठीक है? Plant fats are more healthy to eat, जैसे कि unsaturated fatty acid की example है olive oil, saturated fatty acid की example है like the margarine and the butter, etc. Right? That's the saturated fatty acid. And saturated fatty acid is also not good for health. ठीक है? So I okay. Yes. 1 minute is left, so let me just finish this. I'm reading this paragraph. The tails of some fatty acids have double bonds between neighboring carbon atoms like this. Such fatty acids are described as unsaturated because they do not contain the maximum possible amount of hydrogen. They form unsaturated lipids. Double bonds make fatty acids and lipids melt more easily. Most oils are unsaturated. If there is more than one double bond, एक से ज़्यादा double है जो केस fatty acid में था, then such a lipid is known as polyunsaturated. And if there is only one double bond, it is known as monounsaturated. Animal lipids are often saturated, no double bonds, and occur as fats. Fats means solids. Whereas plant lipids are often unsaturated and they occur as oils at room temperatures, for example, sunflower oil and olive oil. Right? And then we are only left with the functions of fats. So I will do the function of fats with you in my next class, right?
Okay, miss.
So last is the done.
Okay, thank you, miss. Love is.
Welcome, last is